Hey everybody. So Colossal has responded to a video that Hank Green made talking about the direwolf situation. And Hank Green did a very good in-depth video of why he had issues with the direwolf situation with Colossal. And I had a lot of the same issues. And now they have responded, and I wanted to react to it, to kind of go over it as kind of like a final piece on it, because I've watched a little bit of this, and um, I think a lot of what they say kind of continues to reinforce exactly what the issues I've had with them have been. So we're going to react to that. Hopefully, Colossal doesn't copyright strike this, because, you know, people like to copyright strike, but I'm going to give my 2 cents.
Or are they?
Hey, Hank. Dr. Beth Shapiro here, Colossal's Chief Science Officer. Just wanted to say thank you for covering our direwolf de-extinction project and discuss a few of the points you made in your video. Since your original video is already 30 minutes long, I'm just going to respond to parts where I can add some clarification or want to respond to specific claims. Otherwise, this is going to get really long. But Hank, if you'd like to have a discussion at some point, I am happy to do that.
There's a biotechnology company called Colossal that is attempting to de-extinct various animals, and they have just claimed that they have de-extincted their first animal, not just their first animal, the first animal to ever be de-extincted. And that claim does not, in my opinion, hold up to scrutiny.
Well, let's talk about what de-extinction really means. The IUCN Species Survival Commission defines de-extinction as, quote, the process of creating an organism that resembles an extinct species, end quote. So according to that definition, we do believe it's accurate to call this the world's first de-extinction.
Okay. First off the bat, the definitions of words do matter. They do matter. IUCN de-extinction is what she said, right? IUCN species.
The IUCN Species Survival Commission
IUCN Species Survival Commission. So looking at that definition, I know we're playing on words here. The only thing I can find that has that exact definition is on Wikipedia. I'm not exactly a trasher of Wikipedia, but I didn't find it on any of their websites. But the point is that they are using definitions to be like, oh, see, we're right. I don't care what your definition of it is. It's what I guess the common term would be, like, what you're trying to push. If your definition is something that closely resembles an organism, that's fine. It is what it is. But that's not what you stated at first. You said this is that organism, not that it is closely. It basically is. You said that it is this organism. That's the problem that we have.
defines de-extinction as, quote, the process of creating an organism that resembles an extinct species, end quote. So according to that definition, we do believe it's accurate to call this the world's first de-extinction. But I'll get more into the specific genomic edits we made later.
However, there are a number of truly remarkable things that are part of this announcement that allow me to still be excited about it, despite the fact that I think they're saying some stuff that they shouldn't say.
Thanks. Kind of.
So this video is the good, the bad, and the straight up wrong of this announcement. And the realization that we are all going to come to in the end here is that what was done is in some ways more remarkable, but also almost certainly more scary than de-extinction. Because if you could say that a species was created here, it is a species that has never existed before.
I actually agree with that at some level, but then we have to explain how we define a species, and biologists tend to disagree about that a lot. For fun, here's what our co-founder, George Church, who is a pioneer in the field of synthetic biology, has to say about species. It's a quote from his social media post. Here we go. Species defining differences, governmental and scientific, include a mixture of physical and physiological measures, breeding, food, ecosystem preferences, and DNA. There is no magic number of changes in any of these categories. A single genetic change can cause speciation, while millions of DNA differences between individuals in a population generally do not affect species-specific phenotypes, much less speciation. Our new healthy direwolves with 20 precise simultaneous edits, yielding key phenotypes distinguishing them from gray wolves, signify milestones that will surely be surpassed soon, given the exponential rate of biotech. But for now, we can pause and enjoy the moment.
So this whole thing, so that what the she said that this was one of the founders of like they are using the trickiness of definitions to bolster their claim. Yeah, speciation is weird. Okay, you guys remember probably the green anaconda speciation, or at least the genetic differences between the two different species of green anaconda that was recently discovered. It was, oh, there's a new species discovered, and it was just like, oh, we know now that these two separate populations, we should consider them a different species. They look exactly the same. Okay, just because it looks like something doesn't mean it is something. That's something that we've been talking about, and I've talked about before. The killer whale thing up in the Pacific Northwest of the Americas. There's two different populations that live in the same area. One is like they go offshore, they eat bigger like mammals. The other one eats fish. They're still killer whales. They are now considered separate species because of genetic differences and the differences between each other. But then it gets tricky because we're talking about animals that there's not as much of a moral distinction. Use that same argument with humans. Okay? One genetic difference could make you a different species. Technically, that might be true. But you're going to tell me that you're going to do genetic testing on me. I got a little Puerto Rican in there. I got, a whole bunch of other little things. And then somebody on the other side of the world, I don't know, where we could just say, what about a black person from Africa? You're going to tell me that we're different species? We're not. We're the same species. There's genetic differences between us. A lot of them. Skin color is just one of them. Skin color is adapted over time to help protect you from the sun. Like, these are genetic differences, okay? We're not different species. We don't consider ourselves different species. Okay, I know that's a drastic example, but this is a game that we're playing right now on the difference in definition. Oh, it's actually a different species because one genetic difference could make the world change. Yes, technically speaking, that's true. But you're trying to convince people who either don't know anything about this and be like, okay, that makes sense. Or you're trying to convince people, you're trying to convince people. That's all it is. There is no, you're playing with definitions. Again, starting out, playing with definitions. I understand she's responding to each thing that he brings up. But this isn't as big of a win as you're making it out to be. And yes, would we like to enjoy the moment? Absolutely. But you are making claims, Colossal Bioscience, that is making it so we can't just sit here and be like, wow, they did some awesome stuff with genomics and there are implications in the future. You're still claiming that these are dire wolves.
Can we please?
This is not bringing a species back. This is the wholesale creation of a new species by humans.
Well, sort of. Our direwolves reflect key traits that evolved in direwolves. We didn't just decide to make 20 changes at random. We chose specific genes that resurrect extinct traits. Some scientists have estimated that by 2050, half of all species that are alive today will be extinct.
So 2050 is 25 years away. I don't know that any scientists have made this claim. It would be really weird to me if they had, but I'm going to Google it. So here it is. Biologists think 50% of species will be facing extinction by the end of the century. Currently, 1 in 10 are facing extinction. So that's not extinct. That's in danger of becoming extinct, and I could believe that. And I could see how that stat could get translated in conversations to half the species alive today will be extinct by 2050. And please do not take this as me saying that this isn't a problem and we don't need to face it. Obviously, we need to face it. It's just a fact that I wanted to check because it seemed off to me, and indeed it is off, but like, whatever.
Good correction. Yes, 50% of species could be in danger of becoming extinct by 2050. That's embarrassing.
Is this the world's first de-extinction? No.
What's embarrassing that you messed up? Like, I know it's pedantic, but like, it's just another example of things that are being said that are just misrepresented information to push a point. That's the entire issue with this. It's being misrepresented to push it a point.
Oh, I don't see any reason why these animals would not be considered gray wolves. They are genetically modified gray wolves. If you would consider them a separate species, then you would have to consider them a synthetic species, and you would not consider them to be a species or even a relative, really, of direwolves. But whatever.
The discussion about what exactly to call them shows just how messy the world of biology can be. And I don't actually see an end to it. As you say, we are going to be having this same conversation from now and into forever. What exactly makes a species a species? It depends on who you ask, but it also depends on why you're asking. If you're asking about fossils, it's mainly about morphology, as that's the data we have. If it's about ecology, it's more likely to be about whether individuals can interbreed. But sometimes it's about geography, like if we're trying to set up boundaries to delimit protection zones. Like any classification system, species concepts are only as useful as they are when applying them makes sense to the actual question. Actual biology does not care. Just ask our Neanderthal ancestors. So let's ask, what is the purpose here? Why are people upset?
She's not wrong. That is the truth. It depends on what situation you're asking in. Absolutely. It is very tricky, and that's what she's hoping for. That's what Colossal is hoping for. That it's a tricky thing, so we're going to say this, and you can't argue with us, or you can try to argue with us, but hey, there's a bunch of nuance here, that's what they're hoping for, and that's the biggest issue. And again, they're all still defending it. They're all still claiming that it's a direwolf. And I know, I just keep on harping on the same thing, but it's a bit irritating.
That we called our direwolves direwolves. If it's because our direwolves are not identical to a particular individual extinct direwolf, then we agree. I repeat, they are not the same as any extinct direwolf, whether from Ohio or Southern California or anywhere else. They're also not the same as direwolves in general. We took gray wolf cells and edited the genomes in these cells to reflect specific, targeted direwolf features. But the purpose of the conversations that we are having now is not to...
So you just admitted the whole thing, which is fine, it's not that necessarily that I thought they were hiding that, but at the same time, they didn't come out and say that. They wait to respond to Hank Green because he has a huge platform. It's the only reason they're responding to it. And every single time they have responded on other people's videos, they didn't push it that way. They're just like, no, it actually technically is. One of the biggest issues I have with this whole situation now is that it has ruined my faith in this company. And I was very excited for all the things that they were planning on doing. I wouldn't say I was necessarily on the bandwagon. I definitely had my, not presuppositions, that's not the right word. I definitely had my weird feelings about it, but I was hopeful. And this has destroyed all that hope. Now you get, Force Galante on it. You're not helping your cause.
Classify fossils or to build a phylogenetic tree. It's to discuss de-extinction. It's feasible. It is no longer just in the realm of words and thoughts. We now have data that we can examine to actually begin to evaluate the potential of these tools for habitat restoration and species preservation. Given this purpose, let's turn to the explicit discussion of how to speak about de-extinction. In 2016, the IUCN Species Survival Commission published a report, Guiding Principles on Creating Proxies of Extinct Species for Conservation Benefit. This report describes a successful de-extinction as something that results in a proxy of the extinct species, a substitute that represents, in some sense, the extinct form. That's a quote. Clearly,
I don't give a shit about. I don't care about
how
quotes. I don't care what this IUCN says about what the point is. I don't care. So you're saying right now it doesn't matter if it's the exact same thing. They just need it to represent. And I get it. There's that argument that it's as long as you fit it in with, you know, what the niche is supposed to be, as long as it's close enough, it's fine. But that's a whole different thing. Okay? Dire wolves are extinct. They have been for thousands of years, tens of thousands of years. Okay? Their habitat, the animals that are evolved to deal with them, if there are some left, they're not evolved to deal with them anymore. They've started to come away from that process. You know, it's been enough time, and people haven't had to deal with them. Think about this. Think about the wolves in Colorado. How many instances have there been issues with just reintroducing like 10 wolves into Colorado? There's been an uproar about it. And those are gray wolves. Okay? What about one that's bigger, bulkier, eats bones? Like, I mean, not that dogs and wolves don't eat bones, but like, is a bigger, bulkier, heftier animal. Where are we going to put that where it won't have a direct impact on people? What? Oh, we're just going to throw it up into Canada or whatever. I don't know where they're planning on doing this, but like, there's so much more to it. It's not even with the mammoth thing. The idea of putting it into like tundra landscapes to help with climate change, that's bullshit. It's bullshit. It's dumb. It doesn't really make sense, and when it doesn't hold up to scrutiny. Like, you're saying, I believe in climate change. I know it's happening. Do I think that we're doing what we can to fix it? No. And even the green people, they don't know how to fix it. They have ideas, and they're throwing their fists up in the air because a lot of governments aren't implementing it. But I don't think it matters, personally. We need to figure out other ways to do it. But reintroducing mammoths isn't going to help, isn't going to change anything. You're going to completely change everything that's already up there that's already needs saving. Like, you're introducing something that we don't know how they act. We don't know how they handle the situations like that. What are you going to just... What happens if the numbers explode? Like, there's just too many things. And yes, it's one step at a time. But it's not like, okay, the thylacine, I could see that happening. That was within... There are people alive today who were alive when the thylacine was. There are. Very few people, but there are. We have a better understanding of what they did. Their range was... You know, there wasn't... Basically Tasmania since humans have been around. That's something I could reasonably see. They need a top predator that could potentially fix things. I could see that. But a dire wolf, like... The whole idea with this is to either reintroduce it or use this, and they talk about this later in the video. They bring back the red wolf. They try to bring back more genetic differences, and I see that as being what Colossal is going to like. That's the important thing that Colossal needs to focus on. Genetic differences, helping with endangered species that are currently here that you can bolster and help new projects. That is the important thing that Colossal needs to focus on. Not the flashy stuff of bringing animals back. That's what they're focused on right now. That's how they make their money. It's cool to think about it, but it's not what the focus should be on. And now, this is their company. They can technically do whatever they legally can do. But this is nothing more than a publicity stunt, in my opinion.
Exist with each other. This is an okay... And I think that these conversations probably...
On our YouTube channel.
Colossal has also cloned red wolf coyote hybrids with the intent of having a species to fill that niche in America, in the United States, in places where there were once red wolves and there no longer are. We've done stuff like that. Like we've done it with Przewalski's horse, where we, had a Przewalski's horse basically have the embryo of a Przewalski's horse implanted into a domestic horse. And now we have more Przewalski's horses in the world, and that's good, because that's a natural species of horse that should be in their ecosystem. There's niches for them to exist inside of, because they are very recently have left those niches.
Yeah,
and predators
exactly.
and wolves are very important to ecosystems, and doing this work with red wolves could potentially have benefit. I just don't know why it's not mentioned in this video. You haven't heard about it. You haven't heard that Colossal cloned red wolves as part of this.
I did hear about it, and that's something I definitely should have covered. But that's it. That's what is the important bit that they need to do.
I don't know why not.
Great explanation. Thank you for helping get more spotlight on the conservation aspects of this project. We appreciate it.
Now, this is like legitimately cool. I'm excited about a part of the thing where they found enough direwolf DNA. And that wasn't just them. Like, I think that there are researchers who work with Colossal and are on this research, but then there are people who are just at Colossal or just on this research or whatever. We've had tons of direwolf skulls from the La Brea tar pits, but because it's a tar pit, all the DNA is super degraded. You're not going to get anything off of those. But we have found a couple of specimens of direwolves. One is, I think, 12,000 years ago. One's like almost 80,000 years old. And we've gotten, I think from the older one, we actually got more DNA. That's a long time ago to get usable DNA, to get not just all of the direwolf genome, but like multiple copies of it, so that you can fill in a lot of the gaps. You're not going to get one solid, unbroken genome, but you could get multiples so that you could do a bunch of computer analysis and have basically a full direwolf genome. And that's amazing. That's really cool.
Thank you. It is really cool.
So this is a very interesting moment in the video to me. This woman has said, we're going to map that to its closest living relative. And then the next line is, so Colossal are using the gray wolf. And that indicates to me, you would listen to that and think that the gray wolf is the closest living relative of the direwolf. It would seem, looking especially just at the skeletons, that direwolves and gray wolves are closely related to each other. But from our current understanding, a paper published in 2021 that looked at the DNA of direwolves, that isn't just like a little bit.
And this is the biggest issue I had. Everything that I had seen, at least that was current, showed that they weren't the closest. The direwolves and gray wolves weren't the closest related thing. And I kept on hearing that there was going to be a new study that was going to come out explaining this. It hasn't come out yet, and kind of looking for an explanation for that.
Wrong. It's like wildly wrong. Paper is called Direwolves Were the Last of an Ancient New World Canid Lineage. There are many authors on this paper, including some people who work at Colossal.
Yes, I was a co-author on that paper, and this is where I need to do a little bit of explaining, because this announcement, admittedly, did not go exactly as planned. Now, you made a correction in your second video about this, and noted that the 2021 paper actually did say that jackals and gray wolves are equally distantly related to direwolves, but I still have an update here. Over the last 2 years, my colleagues and I have gone back to 2 of the direwolves from that 2021 paper and generated a ton more ancient DNA data. The results of that work are now available on bioRxiv, titled On the Ancestry and Evolution of the Extinct Direwolf. It's a pretty cool title, yeah. We show in that paper that the lineage that evolved into gray wolves actually bred extensively with the lineage that eventually evolved into direwolves. So we now know that gray wolves are indeed closer genetically to direwolves than jackals are. But you couldn't have known that because the paper wasn't publicly available yet. Unfortunately, the New Yorker broke our embargo and posted this story before we were ready.
Oh.
Ideally, we would have been able to show that paper at the same time that we announced the de-extinction of the direwolf. That was the plan all along, and all of the content explaining the project was prepared with that in mind. So, yes, given the information available to you at the time, your correction statement in your second video would have been right. But now we have more information, and you can read all about it on bioRxiv while the paper is being peer-reviewed.
That's pretty cool. I'm fine with that. I appreciate the explanation because explanations on stuff like that are very important, whether you think so or not. There's science is very weird in a lot of ways, and the average person who doesn't really pay attention to scientific literature might see a paper and be like, well, it says something completely opposite of what this other one was saying. And basically, what a paper is, what a peer reviewed paper is, it's a group of scientists who do an experiment of some sort, and they have a hypothesis that they're either trying to prove or what they think is going to happen. They run the experiment and they show their findings, and then they give their conclusion and all that. And then you have other scientists look at it and say, and that's what the peer reviewed part is, look at it and be like, we agree or we disagree. So you can come out with a paper and give all these findings. And if another scientist goes and tries to replicate that experiment and doesn't get the same answers, they can come out with another paper and go, you're wrong. This is why, and show that evidence. And so basically, you could have like the whole. If anyone pays attention to the Spinosaurus situation, there's always a new paper coming out about Spinosaurus, and it was like this, or it was like this, or it was like this. Oh, this, the meme of that it looks like a walrus now. Like it's one of those things where there is a lot of back and forth, but it should be based on what the correct, maybe not even the correct answer. That's not even the best way to describe it. What the most recent and best data shows. And if you can prove it otherwise, that data obviously isn't worth it anymore. Okay? It could give you a base of what's going on, but if more data comes out and you're able to expand upon that, it's not that the other stuff wasn't good, but that was what the understanding of it based on that previous data was. And what she's saying is that more data came out, so now we have a better understanding than we had before, and we're letting other scientists take a look at it to basically say whether they believe this is in fact true or not. And if they don't think it's true, or they don't think the data is right, or whatever, then they'll come out and say something about it. But if it is, and there's no arguments against it, that's going to be the next, current up-to-date information on this. So, and the fact that the New Yorker was the one who came out and pushed that rather than Colossal, that makes me, I'll take back a bit of my criticism on them for releasing it like that and not releasing the data. You should have said that earlier, but good on you, at least for that. Again, the whole thing that I have the issue with is that you're claiming that something is one thing when it's not. Even if you take the direwolf thing, okay, the issue where we used to think that jackals were more closely related to direwolves than gray wolves. Okay, she's saying, well, now with more information, come to find out that it's actually, they're closely related, but the gray wolf is more closely related. So what we did was, the best we could do. That's fine. Okay? The issue is now your claim is that it is a dire wolf. And then you go into the definitions of what a species actually is, and that you changed, 20 genes. And that, technically speaking, only one gene difference could make it a different species. That's going to be the issue now. Now that the other part is figured out. Even with all of what you've come out with, it still doesn't change the fact that you've even admitted this isn't exactly a dire wolf, but we're just going to call it that because technically speaking, it's close enough.
There's another useful clarifying point. What I have consistently said is that dire wolves are closer to gray wolves than to jackals. This is true based on our paper, but if you dig into the meat of the paper, you will also see that when we focus on the places in the genome where dire wolves are genetically unique among canids, red wolves and gray wolves both share a similar number of genetic differences to dire wolves. So the choice was really among these two. When we selected the gray wolf as the surrogate, we considered lots of things. We've talked about genetic and morphological similarities, but we also considered accessibility and what scientific information we could leverage. Things like comparative genomic data, husbandry and veterinary protocols, behavioral and health data, even plans for rewilding. Gray wolves were the clear choice as a surrogate species because this existing research infrastructure helps enable keener insight into scientific outcomes and better animal welfare outcomes.
But the people at Colossal
Yeah,
do have
no
a
problem with
great
that.
We're changing the genome of this living animal partially into the genome of the extinct animal for those genes that matter, for the traits and characteristics that we want to see.
What he's saying here is what traits and characteristics do we want to see in the animal? We're going to pick genes that affect those. And this is another cool part of what Colossal is doing, which is not just taking a genome and being like, okay, we have to get this whole genome into this other animal, but saying, okay, what things actually code for traits, grabbing those and putting them in the wolves. And that's difficult work to do. And requires a lot of knowledge that is relatively new. Even in humans, this would be hard to do. And we have a lot more information about human genomes than we do about wolf genomes.
Agreed. And this is a great place to highlight one of the reasons that dire wolves were an ideal choice for the first de-extinct species. Because gray wolves are the surrogate genome for dire wolves, we can leverage decades of scientific research and knowledge about how to do this with animal welfare clearly at the forefront. For example, we learned from our two ancient direwolf genomes that these two direwolves had genetic variants in 3 key pigmentation genes that were predicted to confer lighter coats. But when we explored the potential impact of these specific edits on a gray wolf genetic background, we learned that variants in these 3 genes in gray wolves, well, in dogs, but dogs are domesticated gray wolves, have been associated with albinism and hearing loss. That's not acceptable, and we know that there are pathways that make wolves white in a safe way, so we went with those edits rather than with the edits that evolved in direwolves.
So basically, I'm fine with what she just said. That's great. But it proves the point is that you can't change the exact genes because of the potential implications. There's a lot more in there that would have made them lighter in color. And I'm glad that they didn't go with let's make them albino and deaf. That's great that they did that. You just admitted the fact that you just changed something that wasn't technically the gene that you wanted to change. You just wanted to bring that trait out of the white coat. So they may not have been white. You just said that they were lighter in color, and that's what the genes were showing. So we changed something in the gray wolf to make him lighter in color. Those genes could interact completely differently, as we've talked about with how one gene change could affect this one and this one. That's part of the problem. You're making it look like something. It doesn't make it the same thing. I don't know. You're just literally stepping in it over and over and over again.
If we want to know which parts of the genome we want to edit to make a gray wolf more like a dire wolf.
She said it here, make a gray wolf look more like a dire wolf. That's what they're actually doing. So, good on her.
If you look back through all of the information we've shared about the mammoth, the dodo, and the thylacine, this is always how we talk about de-extinction. We aren't trying to make something that's genetically identical to one animal of the past. Not only is that impossible, given the technology available today, but it comes with a host of other problems, not the least of which would be a lack of genetic diversity. By identifying which genes control for which traits and editing specifically those genes and traits into an extinct animal's closest living relative, we can lean on the genetic diversity in those living animals to eventually bring back healthy, genetically diverse populations.
So you just told the game. You keep the whole point, the whole thing. It's been, we're going to bring this animal back. We're going to bring this animal back from extinction. The dodo, the thylacine, the mammoth, the dire wolf now. We're going to bring them back from extinction. And you just said, with the technology, it's impossible. Oh, but we're going to play the semantics game, and of course it's impossible, but we're just changing some of the things to make it look like it. Say that then. But you haven't. That's not what you've been running on the entire time. You haven't said, we're going to bring back similar animals. Whenever somebody talks about it, whenever somebody else talks about it, I'm just going to use Forrest Galante as an example, or Nicole, I don't remember you know, Nicole, the girl who talks about, you know, fossils and stuff. You know, she's cool, but the whole point has been bringing these animals back from extinction. But that's not what you're doing, and you just told us that's not what you're doing. You're just bringing back stuff that looks similar. We're just creating a species that looks similar. And that is why I have now lost complete faith in this company for that cause. Not the other causes. As I said earlier in the video, the most important thing that Colossal will do is help with the genetic differences in almost nearly extinct species and endangered species, and help keeping those populations stable, changing the genes just a bit to help with genetic diversity in situations like that. That is what they're going to be important for. All this other stuff is just hype to get people excited about the company and send money their way. That's all this is. That's all this is. If it was about anything else, they would have said it for the most part, but that's not their key marketing. Their key marketing is we're going to bring animals back from extinction. And you might disagree with that. You might think I'm being too harsh. Be honest. You're not being honest right now. You're playing games. You're talking to us as if we're stupid. As if we can't see what you're doing. And I understand I'm sounding frustrated, but that is the issue. You're talking to us like we're children. Oh no, the definitions matter. They do matter. But if you were being honest, you would know how this looks. And I believe you do. And honestly, the rest of it, I'm not even super interested in. I mean, I'm not going to play the whole thing. I'm pretty much going to end that here because she gave up the game. The most important parts that I had questions about, she has already talked about. And it goes back to the beginning. The whole time they have told us that they're going to bring back these animals because it'll be best for conservation and it'll help heal the world of the things that humans have done. In reality, it's we're going to possibly bring back some stuff that might look like this other species, but it's not. And we knew it wasn't the entire time, but we told you it was. And now that there is, oh, this is our first, not just talking. This is our first, oh, we brought this back. It's back. Oh, we realize what really is happening here. Or at least have a better understanding of what the entire goal was. And it's not what we thought. So, let me know what you think down below, if you agree with me or not. If you think I'm being too harsh, I greatly appreciate it. Like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. I'll see you on the next one.